It's 3 a.m. The house is silent. The world is asleep. But somewhere, an elderly person is wide awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the clock tick, feeling a strange heaviness in the chest. Not pain, not fear, just awareness. If you've noticed your parents, grandparents, or even yourself waking up at exactly the same time every night, around 3 a.m., this is not random. This is not just old age, and it's definitely not something to ignore. At this hour, the mind becomes louder than the world. Memories rise, regrets whisper, thoughts that were buried all day suddenly demand attention. This video is about why elderly people keep waking up at 3 a.m. Not the surface-level reasons everyone repeats, but the deep biological, psychological, and emotional signals the body sends when life enters its later chapters. Doctors may call it sleep disturbance. Psychology calls it heightened awareness. Ancient wisdom calls it the hour of truth. And here's the disturbing part. Many elderly people don't wake up because something is wrong around them. They wake up because something is changing within them. If this topic resonates with you, pause for a moment, hit like, subscribe, and stay with me till the end, because what you're about to hear may completely change the way you see aging, sleep, and the human mind. Now let's talk about the real reasons behind this 3 a.m. awakening, the ones nobody explains properly. 1. The brain enters a different mode with age. As people grow older, sleep is no longer the heavy, unconscious collapse it once was. In youth, sleep pulls the body under like deep water, thick, dark, and protective. Hours pass without awareness, but with age, that depth begins to thin. The brain no longer sinks fully into long stretches of deep sleep. Instead, it cycles more frequently into lighter stages, where awareness is closer to the surface. This is not a defect, it is a shift. The mind begins to sleep with one eye open, as if it has learned that time is limited and nothing should be missed, not even silence. That is why 3 a.m. becomes so powerful. By this hour, the elderly brain has often already completed its shortened deep sleep cycles. What remains is light sleep, fragile, easily interrupted, hovering just above consciousness. And when the mind floats that close to waking, it doesn't take noise to pull it up. It doesn't take a thought. Sometimes it takes nothing at all. The brain simply rises. The eyes open suddenly. The room comes into focus instantly. There is no fog, no confusion, only awareness. This is what makes the awakening feel so strange. Unlike younger people who wake disoriented and heavy, elderly individuals often wake at 3 a.m. with sharp clarity. They know exactly where they are. They know what time it is without checking the clock. They feel awake before they meant to be awake. The mind snaps on like a light in a dark room, while the body remains heavy, still tired, still begging for rest. That mismatch, an awake mind trapped in a sleepy body, is what makes returning to sleep so difficult. And once awareness turns on, it doesn't easily turn off again. The brain at this age has learned patterns. It has learned to observe. It has learned to reflect. So instead of drifting back into sleep, it starts scanning. Sensations become louder, the ticking clock, the hum of the fan, the distant sound of traffic. Thoughts begin lining up, quietly but persistently. Sleep doesn't disappear suddenly. It slowly retreats, like something that knows it's no longer in control. Many elderly people describe this moment the same way. I wasn't worried. I wasn't thinking about anything. I just woke up. That sentence alone reveals the truth. This is not anxiety pulling them awake. This is the brain transitioning into a different operating mode, one where rest and awareness overlap. The mind is no longer designed to fully shut down for long periods. It prefers short rests, frequent awakenings, gentle observation of the world even while the body remains still. There is something deeply emotional about this shift. It feels like the brain is standing guard, like it has decided that sleep should no longer erase hours of existence. At 3 a.m., when the world is quiet and the future feels distant, the mind chooses presence over unconsciousness, not out of fear, but out of instinct, out of experience, out of a lifetime of learning that awareness is valuable. This is why elderly people often lie there, not restless, not panicked, just awake, watching the ceiling, listening to their own breathing, feeling time pass slowly. The body wants sleep, but the mind has already crossed the threshold into wakefulness. And once it does, sleep becomes something that must be invited back, not something that arrives automatically. This isn't weakness. It isn't damage. It is the brain adapting to age, memory, and meaning. Deep sleep shortens, light sleep expands, and awareness grows stronger in the quiet hours of the night. At 3 a.m., the elderly brain is no longer lost in sleep. It is hovering between worlds, half resting, half waking, fully aware that the night is no longer just for dreaming. And that is why 3 a.m. doesn't feel like night anymore. It feels like a quiet awakening long before the sun ever rises. 2. The nervous system becomes more sensitive. With age, the nervous system changes in a quiet but profound way. When we are young, the body is protected by buffers, biological shock absorbers that soften the impact of the world. Loud sounds fade quickly. Emotions pass without staying long. Stress spikes but settles fast. The nervous system recovers easily. But as years pass, those buffers thin out. The system becomes more exposed, more honest, more reactive. What once brushed past the body now leaves a mark. What once felt small now feels intense. That is why small things begin to feel big. A sudden sound can feel jarring. A minor discomfort can linger longer than expected. Even silence, once calming, can feel heavy, almost loud. The nervous system no longer filters as aggressively. It receives everything more directly. This isn't fragility. It's sensitivity sharpened by time. The body has lived through enough to stop dulling sensations. It feels them fully now. At 3 a.m., this sensitivity reaches its peak. The world removes all distractions at once. No conversations to anchor attention. No television to blur the mind. No phone notifications to interrupt the inner flow. Responsibilities are temporarily suspended. There is nothing left to engage with except the body and the mind themselves. And in that emptiness, the nervous system turns inward automatically, instinctively, without asking permission. Every sensation becomes amplified in that moment. The weight of the blanket feels heavier, the heartbeat becomes noticeable, breathing feels deeper, slower, more deliberate. A slight ache in the back or knees suddenly demands attention. These sensations were present all day, but daytime noise drowned them out. At night, the nervous system finally hears itself clearly, and once it starts listening, it doesn't stop. Emotions follow the same pattern. During the day, they are pushed aside by tasks and conversations. At 3 a.m., there is nothing to suppress them. They don't arrive dramatically. They seep in quietly. A vague sadness, a sense of longing, a memory that carries warmth and pain at the same time. The nervous system doesn't label these feelings, it simply amplifies them. What was a whisper during the day becomes an echo in the night. This is why older people often say they don't know why they're awake. There is no single thought, no obvious worry. It's the nervous system itself that is alert, wide open, exposed, receptive. The body feels more. The heart feels more. Even stillness feels intense. The silence isn't empty. It's full of sensation. A younger nervous system can sleep through this. It is insulated. It is less tuned in. It can ignore minor sensations and emotional undercurrents. But an older nervous system doesn't ignore it, registers. It processes. It stays awake, not out of fear, but out of awareness. It has learned that ignoring signals comes at a cost, so it listens carefully now. At 3 a.m., the nervous system becomes like a quiet observer, scanning inward instead of outward. It checks the body. It checks the emotional landscape. It notices what has been carried all day without acknowledgement. And once this scan begins, sleep becomes difficult not because something is wrong, but because something is being felt fully for the first time. This is why the awakening feels so deep and so personal. It's not restless tossing and turning. It's lying still, feeling everything more intensely than expected. The night doesn't disturb the elderly nervous system, it reveals it. And in that exposure, wakefulness becomes unavoidable. What a young mind sleeps through, an older mind experiences deeply. And at 3 a.m., there is nowhere to hide from that depth. 3. Unresolved memories surface at night. Night does something powerful that daylight never allows. It removes masks. During the day, elderly people stay occupied not necessarily because they want to, but because activity protects them. Routine gives structure. Television fills silence. Conversations keep emotions on the surface. Responsibilities, even small ones, provide distraction. The day gives them somewhere to place their attention, so they don't have to look inward for too long. But night takes all of that away. At 3 a.m., there is no performance left, no role to play, no one to respond to. The world goes quiet, and with that quiet, the brain loosens its grip on suppression. Thoughts that were gently pushed aside all day are suddenly allowed to rise. Not aggressively, not violently. They arrive slowly, like old photographs sliding out of a drawer that hasn't been opened in years. Unresolved memories are patient. They wait for silence. This is when old conversations return, not the loud ones, but the subtle ones. The things that were almost said. The moments where words were swallowed to keep peace. The apologies that were delayed too long. The truths that felt dangerous at the time. At 3 a.m., the mind doesn't replay these moments to punish it, revisits them because they were never finished. The brain seeks closure the way the body seeks rest. Missed chances appear next. Not dramatic regrets, but quiet forks in the road. What if I had stayed? What if I had left sooner? What if I had said yes or no just once more? These questions don't scream. They whisper, and whispers are impossible to ignore in the stillness of night. The elderly mind, having lived long enough to see outcomes clearly, understands the weight of these moments more deeply now than it ever did back then. Then come the people who are no longer here. Faces rise without warning. A parent, a partner, a friend, someone who once filled a room with presence and now exists only in memory. The mind doesn't summon them consciously. They appear because nighttime is when emotional walls are lowest. There is no distraction to block the ache of absence, no daylight noise to dilute longing. The mind replays laughter, arguments, shared silence, scenes so vivid they feel almost physical. And this is where sleep breaks completely. Because the mind is no longer trying to rest, it is trying to process. Like a quiet documentary playing inside the head, scenes move slowly, without commentary. There is no judgment, no dramatic music, just observation. The brain reviews life not to torture itself, but to understand it, to make sense of what was lived, loved, lost, and left unfinished. This is something youth rarely experiences. Younger minds are future-oriented. They run forward. Older minds are reflective. They look back not with bitterness, but with depth. At 3 a.m., when the future feels distant and the past feels close, reflection becomes unavoidable. Sleep loses priority because meaning takes its place. Many elderly people lie awake during these hours with tears that don't fall and thoughts that don't hurt but weigh. There is a heaviness that is not sadness alone. It's the weight of a life fully lived. A life with layers. A life with unfinished emotional threads. The soul doesn't ask for sleep in that moment. It asks for acknowledgement. That is why these awakenings feel different from anxiety or insomnia. There is no racing heart, no panic, just stillness and memory. The body is tired, but the soul is awake, asking to be heard one last time before morning returns and masks are put back on. At 3 a.m., sleep doesn't disappear because something is wrong. It disappears because something important wants attention. The night becomes a mirror, and the mind looks into it, not to suffer, but to understand who it has been. 4. The body's internal clock shifts. As the body ages, time begins to behave differently inside it. Not clock time, but biological time. The internal clock that once followed the rhythm of the sun, social life, and long busy days slowly starts to reset itself. This clock is called the circadian rhythm, and in youth it is flexible, adaptable, forgiving. It allows late nights, early mornings, broken sleep, and quick recovery. But with age, that flexibility fades. The rhythm becomes stricter, more predictable, more honest about what the body can and cannot do. One of the biggest shifts happens with melatonin, the hormone that tells the body it's time to sleep. In younger people, melatonin rises late at night, allowing sleep to stretch deep into the early morning hours. But in elderly bodies, melatonin often releases earlier in the evening. Sleepiness arrives sooner. Eyelids feel heavy earlier than expected. The body gently insists on rest long before the world slows down. And when sleep starts earlier, it also ends earlier. This is the part most people misunderstand. When an elderly person wakes up at 3 a.m., it's easy to assume something is wrong. Insomnia, anxiety, restlessness. But often, the body has simply completed the sleep it believes it needs. From its perspective, the night has already run its course. Deep sleep happened earlier. Light sleep followed. And now, the internal clock says, it's time to be awake. For many elderly people, 3 a.m. is no longer night. It feels like early morning. The mind feels clear. The body feels rested enough. There is no grogginess, no confusion, just the quiet sense that sleep has finished its job. The world outside may still be dark, but inside, the day has already begun. This creates a strange emotional dissonance. The body is awake, but the world is asleep. The clock on the wall says night, but the internal clock disagrees. So the elderly person lies there, awake not because they can't sleep, but because their body doesn't understand why it should. This is why forcing sleep at this hour often fails. The body resists. Lying still doesn't bring rest back. Closing the eyes doesn't invite dreams. The internal rhythm has moved on, and no amount of willpower can reverse it. The body isn't malfunctioning, it's following a schedule rewritten by age. There's something deeply isolating about this shift. When the body wakes at 3 a.m., there is no one else awake to share the moment. The house is silent. The neighborhood is dark. Even time itself feels paused. And yet, inside the body, systems are already stirring. The mind is alert. The senses are active. Hunger may even whisper. The body is ready long before the world is. This early waking often carries a quiet sadness, not because it hurts, but because it highlights separation. The elderly body begins living slightly out of sync with society. Meals, conversations, and routines no longer align perfectly. And at 3 a.m., that separation is felt most clearly. Awake in a sleeping world, the person becomes a witness to time passing alone. But this shift is not a failure. It is not decay. It is adaptation. The body, having lived long enough to understand its limits, restructures itself around efficiency. It rests when it can. It wakes when it's ready. It no longer bends itself to external schedules. It follows its own. The tragedy is that many elderly people blame themselves for this change. They believe they are broken, that something is wrong with their sleep. But the truth is quieter and more compassionate. Their body has simply moved into a different phase of time. At 3 a.m., they are not waking too early. They are waking on time, according to the clock that now lives inside them. The world may still be asleep, but their body has already begun its morning. 5. Silence becomes more meaningful with age. When people are young, silence feels uncomfortable. It feels like something is missing, like time is being wasted. The young mind craves noise, music, voices, notifications, movement, anything to fill the space. Silence feels awkward, even threatening, because it leaves the mind alone with itself before it has learned how to listen. So youth runs from quiet, chasing stimulation as proof of being alive. But age changes that relationship completely. As years pass, silence stops feeling empty and starts feeling honest. Older people have already lived through noise, arguments, crowds, responsibilities, ambitions, expectations. They've played roles for decades: provider, caretaker, peacemaker, decision maker, pillar. They've explained themselves endlessly. They've been needed, pulled, depended on, and slowly, the nervous system grows tired of performance. Silence becomes the only place where the self doesn't have to be edited. At 3 a.m., silence reaches its purest form. No phones ringing, no questions waiting to be answered, no expectations hanging in the air. In that hour, silence isn't just the absence of sound, it's the absence of demand. No one needs anything. No one is watching. No one is judging. The elderly person doesn't have to be useful, wise, strong, patient, or polite. They don't have to explain their choices or justify their feelings. For one quiet hour, they are allowed to simply exist. This is why many elderly people wake at this time without frustration. They don't toss and turn. They don't reach for distractions. They lie still and breathe. They listen not outward, but inward. The breath becomes noticeable. The body feels present. The mind slows into a rhythm that doesn't need to prove anything. Silence, at this age, feels like relief. During the day, even calm moments are filled with subtle pressure conversations, routines, expectations of response. Someone may ask questions. Someone may need reassurance. Someone may require attention. But at 3 a.m., none of that exists. The world temporarily releases them. The silence says, "You don't owe anything right now." That is an incredibly rare experience for someone who has spent a lifetime being needed. In this silence, thoughts don't rush, they drift. Memories don't intrude, they rest. Emotions don't demand resolution, they simply pass through. There is no urgency, no timeline, no future to plan, and no past to defend. Just breath moving in and out, steady and real. For many elderly people, this is the only hour where they feel fully themselves, not a role, not a responsibility, not a version shaped by others. And once the body learns how peaceful that silence feels, it begins to seek it. The mind starts waking at 3 a.m., not because it is disturbed, but because it remembers this space. A space where nothing is required. A space where existence is enough. Sleep loosens its grip because silence offers something just as restorative. Permission to stop being everything for everyone. This is why silence becomes meaningful with age. It's no longer emptiness, it's sanctuary. It's the one place where life pauses its demands and allows the soul to stretch without explanation. At 3 a.m., the elderly don't wake into loneliness. They wake into freedom. No noise, no performance, no masks, just breath, just presence, just being alive, without having to prove it. 6. The mind starts thinking in life review mode. As people age, the mind begins to change its direction. When we are young, the brain is future-driven. It plans, chases, builds, proves. Life feels like an open road stretching endlessly forward. But with age, something subtle shifts. The road behind becomes just as important as the one ahead. Psychology calls this life review a natural, instinctive process where the brain begins to look back, not with obsession, but with meaning. This isn't regret. It isn't nostalgia. It's integration. The mind starts asking, what was this life? And more importantly, did it add up to something real? During the day, these questions stay quiet. Routine keeps them at bay. Conversations redirect attention. Responsibilities push reflection aside. But at 3 a.m., when the world is asleep and the future feels far away, the mind enters a different mode. It stops running forward and starts turning inward, not urgently, not dramatically, just honestly. The questions arrive softly. Did I live well? Not perfectly, just well. Did I love enough? Not everyone, just the ones who mattered. Did I matter? Even a little? These questions don't come with panic. They come with stillness. The mind doesn't demand answers, it listens for them, like a quiet interviewer replaying the tape of a lifetime. Scene by scene, small moments gain weight now. The way someone was treated, a choice made under pressure, a kindness given or withheld. At this stage of life, the brain is no longer impressed by achievements alone. It evaluates meaning. This is why the thoughts feel so heavy at night. They are not loud thoughts. They don't shout or spiral. They whisper. And whispers, in total silence, are impossible to ignore. At 3 a.m., there is nothing competing with them. No noise, no urgency, no distraction. The mind finally has the space to ask the questions it postponed for decades. Many elderly people lie awake, not because they are anxious, but because they are measuring their life against their values, measuring moments against intentions, measuring who they became against who they once hoped to be. This isn't cruel, it's deeply human. The brain wants coherence. It wants to know that the story it lived makes sense, and the answers don't always come clearly. Sometimes there's peace, a quiet sense of, I did what I could. Sometimes there's sadness, not sharp, but tender. Sometimes there's pride mixed with grief. Often, there's acceptance slowly forming. This life review doesn't happen all at once. It unfolds in fragments, night after night. At 3 a.m., the mind revisits pieces of the story, adjusting how it understands them. Moments once judged harshly are softened. Pain is reframed. Love is recognized more clearly. The mind isn't punishing itself, it's trying to settle. Sleep breaks during this process because reflection requires awareness. The brain doesn't want unconsciousness, it wants presence. It wants the person to be awake enough to feel, to remember, to reconcile. This is why these awakenings feel profound rather than restless. The body may be tired, but the mind is doing essential work. What makes this stage so intense is that the questions no longer feel hypothetical. Youth asks, "What will my life be?" Age asks, "What was my life?" And that shift carries weight. At 3 a.m., when the world is quiet and time feels exposed, the mind steps into its role as witness. It reviews not to judge, but to understand, to arrive at peace, to quietly answer the deepest question of all. Was I enough as I was? These thoughts don't scream because they don't need to. They whisper because they are true. And at night, truth has nowhere to hide. 7. It's not always a problem sometimes. It's a transition. This is important, and it deserves to be said clearly. Waking at 3 a.m. does not always mean something is wrong. It does not automatically signal illness, decline, or failure. In many cases, it signals something far quieter and far deeper. It signals transition. Human beings don't just age physically. We age psychologically, emotionally, and internally. And just like adolescence or midlife, later life has its own transformations. They are less visible, but more profound. When elderly people begin waking at 3 a.m., it is often because they are crossing an invisible threshold, a shift in how they relate to themselves, to time, and to meaning, a shift in identity. For decades, many people are defined by roles: worker, provider, parent, problem solver. These roles demand energy, urgency, and outward focus. But as those demands fall away, the identity built around them begins to loosen. The question quietly emerges: who am I when I am no longer needed in the same way? The mind wakes early because it is reorganizing itself around a new answer. Sleep adjusts because the old rhythms no longer fit the new self. A shift in purpose. Purpose in youth is often external achievement, progress, building something that didn't exist before. Later in life, purpose turns inward. It becomes about understanding, passing wisdom, finding peace, and making sense of what has already been built. This internal purpose doesn't require constant action, but it does require awareness. At 3 a.m., when distractions vanish, the mind naturally drifts toward these questions. It is not restless, it is attentive, a shift in awareness. Many elderly people describe becoming more sensitive, more intuitive, more emotionally open. They notice subtleties they once overlooked. They feel undercurrents in conversations. They sense emotional truth faster than logical explanations. This heightened awareness doesn't shut off at night. In fact, night amplifies it. Sleep becomes lighter because the mind is tuned to perception rather than shutdown. This is why waking at 3 a.m. often feels different from insomnia. There is no panic, no racing thoughts, just alertness, stillness, presence. The body rests more slowly, but the mind sharpens. It feels as if attention has been transferred from muscles to meaning. The body slows down because it must. Joints ache, energy conserves itself. Recovery takes longer. But as the body releases speed, the mind gains depth. Thoughts become fewer but heavier. Feelings become quieter but truer. And sleep adapts to this internal trade-off. It no longer pulls the mind completely under it, allows it to float. This transition can feel unsettling, especially in a world that treats aging only as loss. But many elderly people, if they speak honestly, will tell you something surprising. Their inner world has never felt richer. They think less but understand more. They speak less but mean more. They need fewer hours of unconsciousness because they are no longer running from themselves. At 3 a.m., this transformation becomes visible. The mind wakes not to worry but to witness, to notice, to reflect. The person lying awake is not broken. They are changing shape internally. They are entering a phase where awareness matters more than speed, and meaning matters more than rest. And this is why sleep patterns shift during this stage of life. The body is preparing for stillness. The mind is preparing for insight. One slows down. The other wakes up. So when an elderly person wakes at 3 a.m., don't rush to fix them. Don't immediately label it as a problem. Sometimes it's not a disorder, it's a doorway. A doorway into a deeper way of being alive. The body rests differently now. The mind listens more carefully. And in the quiet hours of the night, a transformation continue, soft, invisible, and profound. As we conclude, if someone you love wakes up at 3 a.m., don't rush to label it as weakness. Sometimes it's wisdom waking early. Sometimes it's the mind asking for gentleness. Sometimes it's the soul asking for silence. And sometimes it's life quietly reminding us that time changes how we sleep, but not how deeply we feel.